This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
The UN Security Council is set to hold an open debate on addressing conflicts in Africa. We look at international efforts to assist Africa make an impactful post-coronavirus pandemic recovery. And the latest from the surge of Moroccan migrants seeking to reach Spanish territory. Welcome to Africa Live on CGTN with me, Beatrice Marshall, in Nairobi. Also ahead on the program. Ethiopia cancels 27 mining licenses. And how a mobile COVID vaccination initiative is making a big difference in remote areas of Kenya. The UN Security Council will hold a debate on insecurity in Africa. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi will chair the open debate as the Council seeks to address the root causes of conflicts in several African countries that have led to humanitarian crisis. CGTN's Nick Mudimba has more details.
Conflicts, deadly terror attacks and even wars have slowed down the development of several African countries. This has led to humanitarian crisis in several parts of the continent. The United Nations Security Council has condemned such attacks and killings. It now wants to find solutions to the conflicts across the continent.
I'm happy that the UN Security Council is having that recognition that Africa is fairly much now where the war theater is with regards to the transnational crimes, and some other crimes like terrorism is taking center stage. And fairly much, when we were dealing with the Islamic states, I think this, as it was fairly much done in the other spaces in the Middle East, that's when the international community started to have a look at what could be happening in Africa. And fairly much, this is a threat that's now getting deeply rooted in Africa because of those weaknesses in governance and where there are porous borders.
While focus remains on promoting peace and security in Africa, post-pandemic recovery is also part of the Council's agenda. Terrorism and violent extremism are arguably Africa's greatest security threats in 2021. Local groups with international terror links are embedded in East, West and Southern Africa. The activities often lead to local conflicts and enable organized crime rackets, destabilizing already fragile political landscapes. Some of the African countries in active conflict hotspots include 3 countries of the Central Sahel, that is Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger. Others are the Central African Republic, Somalia and now Mozambique, which is experiencing a crisis in Cabo Delgado.
Terrorism anywhere on earth is terrorism elsewhere on earth. Right now the baselines have moved. Any threat that's happening somewhere else is not private and personal anymore. They are both very public and global in impact.
Type of conflicts being experienced in Africa are inter-ethnic conflicts, interstate conflicts, liberation conflicts, civil rights conflicts and political transition conflicts. State Council and Foreign Minister of China Wang Yi will chair the open debate, which is one of China's signature events during its May presidency of the Security Council. A presidential statement may be adopted in connection with the meeting. Nick Mudimba, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
Well, let's get more on that development. We'll go to Dr. Andrews Atta Asamoah. He's the head of Africa Peace and Security Governance Program, ISS. He's joining us via Zoom from Pretoria in South Africa. Thank you, Dr. Asamoah, for joining us on the program. The UN Security Council is putting the spotlight now on efforts to address conflicts in Africa. What should be the key priority areas?
Thank you very much for having me. I think that if you look at all the drivers that we see on the continent, it ranges from political issues to identity issues, to issues of natural resources, all the way through to issues of marginalization. In terms of causes, the key issues that we need to put priority on has to do with governance issues, because at the end of the day, they are the main drivers of the many issues we have on the continent. But in terms of geography, I think we really need highlight of the many issues in the Sahel region of the continent. We've also seen escalation of insecurity in the southern part of the continent around Mozambique. So that also needs massive prioritization the Horn of Africa certainly needs so much focus. Even though Somalia has made some progress, there's really need for us to sustain the progress there. So the Horn of Africa,
Right.
And in some parts of West Africa as well. So those are the areas we need to put focus.
So Africa often talks about African solutions to Africa's problems. Do you think homegrown solutions are inadequate in resolving conflicts on the continent? And how can such initiatives be strengthened?
So far, we can praise some of the homegrown solutions at the level of the African Union in terms of trying to operationalize the Africa Standby Force, but also preventive diplomacy at many levels, even regional engagement and some very robust actions by some member states. But that is woefully inadequate if you compare that to the nature and gravity of the issues we have on the continent. What that means is that external support is incredibly important. Now, the main point here is that, insecurity everywhere in the world nowadays is insecurity everywhere. So as much as Africa may be hosting these conflicts, it's also important for the world to know that insecurity in Africa is as much insecurity in any part of the world. That calls in actors like the United Nations, as much as the United Nations also has a primary responsibility for the maintenance of international peace and security. So there's something happening in Africa, but that is inadequate. And I think that calls for support from all actors in this sense.
Well, economies and health systems in Africa, we know, have been badly hit by the coronavirus pandemic. This, in some way, has compounded the security challenges on the continent. What strategies will address this issue in a post-pandemic recovery situation?
I think we need to be realistic. The main thing that the COVID has brought to bear is that it's more than a health situation. And so what we need to do is, first of all, at the national and regional levels, understand that COVID is much more than a health crisis. We need to look at it as a holistic situation that requires us to look at the security dimension of it. As you indicated, and rightly so, there's been a worsening of several indicators of insecurity across the continent. And so that has to be part of the robust response. As much as the economic variables are important, because if we don't get the economic recovery right, then all the drivers of insecurity associated with socioeconomic situations might force an increase in insecurity as well. So we need more of a holistic solution, particularly when it comes to the creation of jobs, so that we can address the youth question that we have on the continent.
All right, Dr. Andrews Atta Asamoah joining us there from Pretoria. Thank you. Meanwhile, the UN Security Council's meeting later today will also discuss the post-COVID-19 recovery plan for Africa, a continent that has so far recorded 4.6 million cases. While governments are working hard to curb the spread of the virus, the emergence of new variants and delayed vaccination is a concern. Angelo Coppola has more on this.
Experts are now saying that many hadn't anticipated the impact that the variants would have on infection rates and the ability to respond to them.
What we're now seeing are at least 4 variants of concern around the world, and all of them have spread rapidly. So they're not, even if they start in one country, they are not going to be confined to that country. And they are going to be able to pick out susceptible populations in other countries as well. As long as we are not immunizing populations in all countries of the world, these variants will continue to emerge. As long as they continue to emerge, they will pose a threat even to vaccinated communities.
People are anxious about the variants, and most want a vaccination to protect themselves and their families.
No, I mean, everybody's cautious. I don't think there's anything we can do about it. It's going to come, and I don't think it's going to stop. I think we're going to keep getting variants. Hopefully we can all at some point get a decent vaccination, which I think will go a long way to giving us some sort of protection, which is probably better than no protection.
Continental health authorities have been advising people to take non-medical precautions to protect themselves, washing hands, wearing masks and social distancing.
I think the most dangerous place to pick COVID up is a shopping centre. You go and touch all the stuff on the shelves, pick things up, have a look at it, put it back. You don't know, but I mean, I go into shops, sanitize my hands, I wear my mask, and hope for the best. That's about as far as I can take it, I reckon. Got to get on with life.
The key impact in many African countries has been on the economy, with many businesses battling to keep their doors open when lockdowns have been imposed.
International travel is restricted at the moment, so I'm not really worried about it. But we're taking all the necessary precautions that we always have, because we've been open right throughout the lockdown. So we're doing the usual things like sanitize hands as we come in, social distancing, like temperatures of staff members and all that on a daily basis.
But is enough being done to bring the pandemic under control on the continent?
The real strides that's been incredibly important is in partnership with the World Health Organization and other global agencies, that countries have been able to use tools that evaluate their readiness to receive vaccines and to be able to distribute them. Having a vaccine is one thing, but having programs that are able to distribute to remote areas and to populations of adults not previously immunized is a real challenge and costs both money, but also a lot of human resource and organization.
Analysts will tell you that there's a big discrepancy in terms of getting access to vaccines between the richer nations and the poorer nations. And most of those poorer nations are on the African continent. And it's not expected to change anytime soon. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Meanwhile, the much anticipated second phase of South Africa's COVID-19 vaccine is underway. The expanded drive will focus on remaining healthcare workers, older adults and vulnerable groups as a third wave of the pandemic sets in. South Africa's cumulative cases stand at over 1.6 million, with over 55,000 deaths and a 94% recovery rate. CGTN's Julie Shire reports.
It's been a long wait for COVID-19 vaccines for South Africa's old and vulnerable. But there was hope nationwide as the country's second phase kicked off from Tembisa Township to the Western Cape.
I'm so happy, I'm so grateful in my heart, and I'm not scared because we see a lot of people that are dying, and the people are saying, don't do this and this, they're gonna kill you. There's no such. So I'm happy.
Now there's a life. We need that life, you know. That's it. And we are happy because the government did everything to be success.
The process here is very, very good. It's well planned, well organized. You don't waste any time, you know, and just to think just this short time, you have this to save your life with. And I really would encourage people to do it.
Close to 500,000 healthcare workers were jabbed in the opening phase with the single-shot Johnson & Johnson's vaccines. Almost 90 vaccination centers were added for the second phase, where the first two-shot Pfizer doses have been administered.
I think even if it's 2 shots, as long as those 2 shots will protect me from this COVID-19.
I'm not happy about it. I thought I was going to get Johnson & Johnson once because, you know, we elderly people, sometimes we got an appointment at the clinic. It clashes with an appointment that they give us here.
There's still much work to be done, however, to boost registration numbers around the country.
We have had our community health workers who, even today, you know, quite a number of them are out in communities. They are walking door to door as part of helping the elderly to register. But all these methods, they are technical methods, meaning that young people can easily do that. But those that are 60 and above, they may struggle a little bit.
After months of planning, South Africa's second phase has kicked off smoothly as the country aims to vaccinate 5 million elderly people by the end of June. Julie Shara, CGTN, Cape Town, South Africa.
A committee formed by Tanzanian President Samia Suluhu Hassan to evaluate the impact of the coronavirus pandemic has advised the government to look into importing World Health Organization listed COVID-19 vaccines. The committee came up with 19 suggestions to tackle the spread of COVID-19 in the country. CGTN's Daniel Kejo has more.
This could be the most awaited report in Tanzania's medical history. The National Committee, tasked with advising the Tanzanian government on how to deal with COVID-19, has shared its findings. It urges Tanzania to join the COVAX facility and obtain free COVID-19 vaccine doses. COVAX is a WHO-backed initiative aimed at equitable global vaccine distribution. The committee says evidence shows the vaccines are scientifically proven to work effectively and efficiently.
Regarding the COVID-19 vaccine, the committee is advising the government to use the relevant institutions to start the process of allowing the free use of COVID-19 vaccines in the country.
The committee also confirmed the country has gone through 2 major waves of the pandemic and says it is vulnerable to a third. Tanzania is eligible for free vaccines from COVAX, but unlike its neighbors Kenya and Rwanda, late President Magufuli's administration did not take steps to receive doses. Now the country waits to see if newly appointed President Hassan's government will proceed with procuring the doses. The committee also urged the government to start releasing COVID-19 data. Tanzania last released numbers almost a year ago, when the country only had 509 officially confirmed cases.
The government should release accurate COVID-19 data to the public and the WHO so that citizens can get the right information from government agencies. This also allows the country to comply with international treaties it had committed itself to.
Other recommendations include strengthening COVID-19 prevention efforts, establishing domestic vaccine manufacturing facilities, and improving diagnostic capacity. All issues that the diplomatic community in Tanzania says it supports.
You know, we are in a global community, so borders are porous, people travel, so it is important to reassure the international partners that there is a policy on health and in this case on COVID in the country, and that certain initiatives are taken. So from the perspective of an international partner is certainly positive development.
The committee advised Tanzania to submit the necessary documentation to Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, to start receiving doses and to participate effectively in implementing regional and international resolutions. Daniel Kijo, CGTN, Dar es Salaam.
French President Emmanuel Macron says he plans to make his first visit to Rwanda at the end of this month. Macron said his visit will be one of politics and remembrance and also economic cooperation. The visit is also seen as a possible breakthrough in relations overshadowed by France's perceived role during the 1994 Rwandan genocide.
Pour votre deuxième question, je vous confirme.
As for your second question, I can confirm that I'll be traveling to Rwanda at the end of May and that the focus will be on politics and remembrance, as well as economics, health and the future. And so we are also keen with President Kagame to write a new page in the relationship and to carry out highly structuring projects in line with what we have just mentioned.
Egypt has meanwhile announced a $4.5 billion arms deal with France. The move has once again highlighted the depth of military cooperation between the two countries. The deal will help expand Egypt's collection of French Rafale fighter jets to about 54 planes. CGTN's Adel Mahroui tells us more on the significance of this deal.
In Paris, Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi met on Monday the CEO of Dassault Aviation, Eric Trappier. The French company is the manufacturer of the Rafale fighter jet. Egypt recently purchased 30 of these advanced long-range multitasking warplanes.
I believe the deal holds a message from Egypt to its regional rivals to highlight its military power. Rafale is an extremely advanced plane. It's considered a warplane in between the 4th and 5th generations. It is comparable to the US F-35, the Chinese G-20 or the Russian Sukhoi 57. They can enable Egypt to engage in war zones or hit targets far from its airspace reach. That enables Egypt to have the power to deal with the issues that threaten its national security, including issues like the Renaissance Dam.
The deal crowns an already fruitful relationship between Cairo and Paris. Regional conflicts saw the two stand on the same side in Libya and the Eastern Mediterranean exclusive economic zones. France is offering this $4.5 billion deal as a loan to Egypt with a 10-year payment plan.
The deal brings the two countries together in a long-term relation. It shows France's confidence in the Egyptian economy's strength because the arms deal is a loan to Egypt. So it's a testimony by France that Egypt can pay back the debt. More importantly, there is confidence that Egypt will not practice policies that will challenge France in the region.
Egypt was the first nation in the world to purchase and receive the Rafale fighter jets when Dassault first offered them to a foreign nation. In 2015, Egypt purchased 24 jets. The deal announced this month will expand Egypt's Rafale fleet to 54 warplanes.
Since the Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi was elected in 2014, the former chief of military intelligence immediately began to diversify Egypt's sources of arms. The aim was to liberate the military from its heavy reliance on American weapons. France rose to be one of the biggest partners in this arms diversification program. Besides the Rafale, Egypt also purchased French naval frigates and defense systems. Adil Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
France says it will work towards persuading rich nations to reallocate $100 billion to African states by October. The funds are expected to come from the IMF's special drawing rights monetary reserves. President Emmanuel Macron made the announcement in Paris, where he was hosting several African leaders, as well as representatives from the World Bank and the IMF. The gathering was aimed at discussing financial support and investment for African economies to help them recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. Jen Keo has more.
Compared to other regions around the world, Africa has been less badly hit by the COVID-19 pandemic. But the meeting in Paris was dominated by fears of the pandemic's aftermath. While richer nations are busy launching economic recovery packages, African nations say they lack the means to follow suit. And a slow vaccine rollout has raised fears that new COVID-19 variants could emerge and devastate the continent.
There's not enough mobilization on that side to be vaccinated from our populations. It's a certain anxiety that is due to the fact that, in my opinion, the vaccine comes from elsewhere. That's why it's necessary to aim for vaccine production in Africa. I think that we will have a fairly big impact on people's attitudes.
We have a common responsibility. Vaccinating our own populations for industrialized countries does not guarantee them any health security. It's obvious that if we continue the current trend of 2% or 3% of Africans being vaccinated, extremely resistant variants will develop on the African continent.
Economies in sub-Saharan Africa shrunk by 1.9% combined in 2020 in an unprecedented recession. The International Monetary Fund warned that Africa faces a shortfall of $290 billion up to 2023. This will undermine all development efforts. France has been pushing for support for African economies.
The first initiative is a very strong initiative to massively produce vaccines in Africa, for Africa, and therefore to develop, through financing and industrial partnerships, a capacity to produce all types of vaccines in Africa.
France and other European countries say they are ready to contribute, and a discussion is starting, especially with the United States, to reach a deal by this autumn. But so far, leaders at the summit have agreed to leverage on the international financial system to create the much-needed fiscal space for African economies and restructure debt for many African countries.
We are ready to reallocate some of the special drawing rights that France will hold so as to have a financing round that will amount to at least $100 billion for Africa. This means we need to more than triple Africa's usual appropriation when this emission of SDR takes place.
Leaders at the summit have welcomed the moratoriums and say they will use the resources effectively and transparently. Jean Keo, CGTN.
To a developing story we have been tracking in Morocco. Migrants swimming and rowing boats towards the shores of the Spanish enclave of Ceuta have been confronted by Spanish security agents. They are now being moved towards a concrete partition back into Morocco. The government says nearly half of the migrants have been returned, excluding children. Ashtatal has more.
On Monday, around 8,000 migrants in Morocco swam or climbed the border fence into Spain. They arrived at the Spanish town of Ceuta, where they were greeted the following day by Spanish troops. Using smoke bombs and batons, they cleared the beach of the remaining migrants.
As an immigrant, I just wanted to migrate to Europe, but I did not manage it. It was not possible. It was not possible because I tried to enter, but I couldn't, so I tried to swim. But the Spanish police took us out through the central door with tear gas and all. It was really very difficult and very unfortunate.
The Spanish government quickly responded to the sudden flux of migrants. Spain's foreign minister raised the issue to EU ministers in a virtual meeting. Morocco was also asked to respect the shared border between both countries. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez, along with the country's interior minister, visited the city of Ceuta.
This sudden arrival of irregular migrants is a grave crisis for Spain and also for Europe. In the name of the Spanish government, I want to transmit this message to all Spaniards, especially those that live in the city of Ceuta and Melilla, that we will rapidly restore the order in your city and on our frontiers.
Spain says its military has expelled nearly 4,000 migrants. Red Cross workers were also on the scene to attend to the migrants who kept arriving. Astatal, CGTN.
Well, let's get more perspective on this issue. I'm now joined via Zoom from Johannesburg by Naim Ejina, the Executive Director, Afro-Middle East Center. Thank you for joining us on the program. So what are the underlying factors exactly behind the current surge in migrants seeking to reach the Spanish territory of Ceuta?
So, of course, the movement of migrants from Morocco into Ceuta and Spain more generally has been an ongoing thing. It's not something new, but as you're saying, there was this surge now over the past 2 or 3 days. And the real factor for this, the real reason for this, is the kind of reason that exists with the migrants all over the world. Migrants are often used as political tools, as chips in a political game. So this has been done in the past by Turkey, for example. Now has been done by Libya. Now Morocco, where Morocco is upset with Spain because they allowed a Polisario leader into the country for medical treatment. And so how do they retaliate? They open the gates for migrants to cross into Spain. Of course, when I say Spain, it's this little part of the northern part of Africa that Spain claims as its own. So the migrants have become political football, and the surge that we're seeing over the past 3 days is simply because Morocco allowed it to happen as a way to teach Spain a lesson.
So this migrant situation, it's sort of been a back and forth for some time now. How should this issue be addressed, given the often brutal response by security agents?
Well, what is really required is a complete kind of global change in the way that migrancy or human mobility is discussed and is dealt with. The manner in which, particularly with Europe, this kind of fortress Europe that has been created, which is only for Europeans and everyone else should be kept out, etc., is part of the problem. I mean, when the discourse that we talk about, says the problem of migrancy, it's not the problem of migrancy, it's the problem of Europe trying to create a fortress to keep people out. After, of course, they had colonized vast parts of the world, then to keep those people out of it. And there's no real reason for this, frankly, considering that in Europe, birth rates are as low as they are, population is decreasing, etc. So what's the point of wanting to keep migrants out, right, except the kind of racism and xenophobia?
So the question then is, how worried should the rest of Europe be given the current state and given past waves of migrants trying to reach European shores?
I think it's the wrong question. Sorry to say, but I think it's the wrong question. The question is how worried should migrants be and the countries from which migrants arrive. Europe is the problem. Europe is not the victim in this. The victims are migrants who who are looking for a better life, who in many instances are looking for a better life because of war, poverty, etc. in their own country, often created by having been created by European powers, and then they end up drowning in the Mediterranean. And that's why I say we need a whole new understanding of what human mobility is about, and a buy-in from global powers particularly about how the issue is going to be dealt with and how humans should be allowed the right to be mobile between nation states.
All right, Naim Gina joining us there from Pretoria. Thank you. The Egyptian parliament may soon discuss a draft law that aims to rid the country's governmental bodies of employees affiliated with the Muslim Brotherhood. The draft suggests a temporary suspension of anyone suspected of belonging to the organization that Egypt lists as a terror group. CGTN's Adel Mahroui takes a look at how the legislative attempt has come about.
After a series of deadly train accidents over the past weeks, the Egyptian parliament summoned Transportation Minister Kamel El-Wazir for questioning. During the session, Wazir blamed some railroad employees who, according to him, are affiliated with the Muslim Brotherhood. Although the official investigations are not over yet and no official accusation to the Brotherhood has so far been made, one parliament member formulated a draft law to sack any government employee who belongs to that group.
As long as there is information that a person is a member of the group, they get suspended. The administrative prosecution should then lead an investigation to validate. I am not suggesting general prosecution because we don't want this person to go to jail as long as they didn't commit a crime. If investigations confirm that they are affiliated to the Brotherhood, they get sacked.
The draft law also suggests that if superiors try to hide an employee's affiliation to the group, they too will face legal consequences. Supporters of the government are welcoming the move.
This law should have seen the light a long time ago. Legally, the Muslim Brotherhood is a terrorist group. Therefore, anyone who practices its ideologies is an outlaw. The law will help the country in many ways. Anyone who belongs to this group is a person whose target is to establish an Islamic caliphate and push this country to failure.
Rights organizations voiced their concern about the consequences of that law. Fears are, if passed, rivals could abuse the law and falsely accuse colleagues of belonging to a terrorist organization.
Non-government and international organizations claim that when we include the Brotherhood members in legitimate work, they won't work in the shadows. That was proven wrong. They have a parallel agenda. The Muslim Brotherhood used these posts to recruit more people and feed them their violent ideology.
The law is still at a very early stage of consideration. The majority party Mustaqbal Watan is reviewing the draft. Once approved, it will be put for an open discussion under the legislative chamber. If it passes, it's going to be the toughest crackdown on members of the Brotherhood who are not accused of a crime. Their only accusations against them will be voicing their ideological beliefs. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
Here's a quick recap of our top headlines this hour. The UN Security Council will hold a debate on insecurity in Africa. The Council seeks to address the root causes of conflicts in several African countries that have led to humanitarian crisis. State Councillor and Foreign Minister of China, Wang Yi, will chair the Open Debate, which is one of China's signature events during its May presidency of the UN Security Council. France says it will work towards persuading rich nations to reallocate $100 billion to African states by October. The funds are expected to come from the IMF's special drawing rights monetary reserves. President Emmanuel Macron made the announcement in Paris, where he was hosting several African leaders as well as representatives from the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. And migrants swimming and rowing boats towards the shores of the Spanish enclave of Ceuta have been confronted by Spanish security agents. They are now being moved towards a concrete partition back into Morocco. The government says nearly half of the migrants have been returned, excluding children. And that's a look at your headlines. Well, let's now take a look at what's coming up next. Let's take a look. Ethiopia cancels 27 mining licenses.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Ethiopia has cancelled 27 mining licenses and sent a warning to 3 companies in a move by the government to spur production. Ethiopia now wants to earn better hard currency from the mining sector through strong policy direction and better partnerships with investors. From Addis Ababa, here is CGTN's Gerum Chala.
The Ministry of Mines and Petroleum of Ethiopia had 97 registered mining companies working with it. From gold to petroleum to emerald and other precious stones, most are actively engaged in the sector. However, the ministry has just announced that 27 licenses have been revoked permanently as these companies were unable to enter into operation even though they have been supported and encouraged to do so based on the agreements they have signed with the government. According to Mines Minister Takala Uma, the license will be opened up to international tender soon enough. The minister emphasized the mining sector is assumed to be a leading sector when it comes to generating the much needed foreign currency for the nation. And over the last 10 months, the country has earned $514 million from the export of different minerals. The minister further said, through the work done over the past few months, gold is now a leading export commodity for Ethiopia, standing much higher than the traditional leading export of Ethiopia, coffee. Ethiopia has been pushing to develop its mineral and metal resource, citing mining as a key sector in its economic reform agenda. Grumtala CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Nigeria's inflation has recorded a drop for the first time in more than 20 months, despite the recent weakness in its currency. Data from the country's Bureau of Statistics shows inflation dipped marginally to 18.12% in April. Despite the drop, Nigerians are still feeling the pressure of price hikes caused by months of rising prices. CGTN's Kelechi Mekalam has more on this from Abuja.
It's becoming increasingly difficult for trader Blessing Joshua to keep up with her foodstuff business. This is as prices of commodities continue to surge amid the double-digit inflation. Staple foods like beans, rice and cassava flour have increased by over 200% in the last 6 months. Like many others, Blessing has been contemplating closing shop due to low profits and patronage.
I change because it's not like this before, but now even to get customer is a problem because people cannot afford that kind of money. When we enter market, before you see one customer, it will take you time because the money where they have, I'm not sure they can buy things. So even when we sell, you know even see gain inside. So what can we do? We continue to sell.
But the pressure is transferred to customers who continue to bear the brunt of this hike. This despite their stagnated income.
When you go to the market to buy something, you find out that the way you buy it yesterday is not the same way today. Things are increasing.
You need to have a job. Even though the price is going, you have to somewhere to go. When you work, they pay you. But now there's no hope of where you go.
Nigeria's inflation recorded its first decline in 21 months. The rate dropped to 18.12% in April from 18.17% recorded in March. Economic watchers say the decline is not significant enough for stakeholders to rest on efforts.
We are to look at how significant this cost, this decline is compared to the level of hardship that Nigerians are experiencing. Then we can say it is nothing at all. It is complete to up the wage or the wages of workers. Because as it stands, that is the only thing that can help them And when that is done, we can now take a countermeasure to ensure that that rise in income or that rise in wages does not continue to aggravate the inflationary system. We need to see a situation where consumers have the power to begin to buy products on the market.
Food inflation dropped to 22.72% in April from 22.95% recorded in March. Several factors, including insecurity and the COVID-19 pandemic, have driven inflation since 2019. This decline may not have any significant impact on prices of commodities, but experts advise the government to continue to ramp up efforts to keep inflation rate down. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
Egypt has launched a mega agricultural project in the Delta region of the Western Desert to boost food security. Authorities say the project will encompass industrial complexes based on agricultural production and create thousands of new jobs. CGTN's Yasser Hakim has more details from Cairo.
Most of Egypt's 100 million population is cramped on a fraction of the country, mainly the Delta and along the banks of the Nile, due to the desert-like conditions that make it inhabitable. The Mustaqbal Misr, or the future of Egypt, is part of a mega project dubbed the New Delta that seeks to change the country's agricultural fortunes. The total area being cultivated is 1 million fidans. It's meant to expand agricultural land and urban communities to the vacant northwestern desert area.
We are talking about 500,000 fedans in the first phase, where we cultivate crops suitable for the weather conditions there. We have cultivated 200,000 fedans with crops such as beets, sugar beets, different vegetables and wheat, which we import in large quantities. Our priority is to achieve self-sufficiency in basic food products. We have a growing population, and 60% of it are the youth, who increase consumption on an annual basis.
One challenge that Egypt has been facing is water scarcity. The North African state's government is establishing desalination and water recycling stations to irrigate the desert land. According to a cabinet statement, the Future of Egypt project will create more than 200,000 job opportunities and add value to the economy.
The agricultural sector is extremely important for Egypt. 57% of Egyptians benefit from agriculture. 15% of the labor force is in the agricultural sector. 20% of non-oil exports are agricultural products, and 25% of the GDP comes from agricultural sector. So giving it special attention is essential to achieving food security, increase national income, and raise economic growth rates. Having more supply will also push prices of food down.
Apart from private developers, the youth will be given small plots of land at subsidized prices to cultivate and live on it, thus creating new communities away from the congested Nile Delta. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Let's now head to Senegal. A construction boom in the country has been driven largely by concrete architecture. But an innovative construction firm is opting for a different approach, bringing back the old raw earth architectural style. Here is the story of Warofila and its push for the use of bioclimatic bricks made from compressed raw earth. Nick Mudimba has that story.
Most of the unfinished buildings in the Senegalese capital Dakar form a uniform grey color of concrete, but one upcoming building stands out with its unique red bricks. The half-cut bricks that stick out of the walls is an intentional design. It allows for the walls to always be in the shade.
Given the sun that we have, and the fact that we always want to isolate the facade from the sun, having the setbacks sort of gives the cantilever that kind of casts a shadow on the facade, sort of giving it, instead of having a really big cantilever on the roof, having sort of these intermediate ones gives the shade while creating a very unique aesthetic language that can only be achieved with bricks.
The bricks are earthen, made from locally available soil. It is an idea of Warofila, a construction company that is pushing for alternative construction approaches.
I think there's been a bit of a divergence from just very basic principles, which is orientation, using the materials that you have locally, only because, you know, they sort of respond better to the climate. You know, Earth has great inertia, and for sort of a hot and dry climate as we have here, and even for tropical climate, it works really well in regulating the temperature. It's readily available, and to produce it doesn't require any additional CO2 emissions. And it can also create local jobs and reinvigorate, I think, building traditional know-hows that have been lost for quite some time.
She says Senegal's traditional homes were made this way, using bricks made from raw earth. The need to conserve the environment is one of the reasons that drive the two investors. Unlike concrete, earth and bricks require almost no energy to produce.
Pour produire du ciment, on a besoin de calcaire.
To produce cement, you need limestone. This means that you need limestone pits. In Senegal, the baobab tree grows on limestone. So in order to meet the growing demand for cement, companies deforest classified baobab forests to extract the limestone.
On est obligé de les cimentiers.
Orofila also uses blocks of shredded and compressed taifa, a fast-growing invasive reed found in the Senegal River, which are placed between the floors for acoustic insulation.
Au-dessus de ces briquettes,
the alternative would have been to add plastic or polystyrene insulator. So we are always trying to source locally and organically in order to reach our goals.
This unique idea is slowly gaining traction amongst investors in the construction sector in Senegal. The company has so far been involved in several projects, including private homes, offices, and part of a train station. A local metal manufacturing company called Shula Metal has contracted Orofila to build its workshop and offices.
The choice is obvious because we can't afford to put off the decisions on the environment. So for us, first it is an ethical choice that is caring for the environment, and also the money saving. What is really important for us is the well-being of the public, who are our partners.
For its efforts, Orofila has been nominated for an Ashden Award. This is a UK prize that highlights global climate solutions. The Orofila team hopes to win it and raise its visibility. Nick Mudimba, CGTN.
And we still have more news for you here on the program. Here's what's ahead. We'll tell you how a mobile COVID vaccination initiative is making a big difference in remote areas of Kenya.
You're watching breaking news on CGTN.
Welcome to the world today on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
To Kenya now, where health workers in the western part of the country are spearheading a COVID-19 vaccination drive. And as CGTN's Nick Mudimba tells us, the initiative calls for some personal sacrifices in order to administer jabs to those in remote areas.
Kenya is currently facing a COVID-19 vaccines shortage. But despite that, health workers in the western part of the country are eager to ensure those in remote areas who can't access hospitals also get vaccinated.
We are giving a corona vaccine, the COVID-19 AstraZeneca vaccine. We do it at the station, and today we've decided to come at this center so that we can get the old people and give them vaccinations at the village. Most of them are not able to get the transport to the hospital. And we are as well trying to curb the spread of corona. So we are trying not to bring them to the hospital because of the crowd. So we are trying to get them at their villages and give them there.
The mobile vaccination drive has made it easier for villagers to get the jab without having to visit vaccination centers.
I received my COVID-19 vaccine today, and it's the best thing that has happened to us here in the village. It is hard to go to the hospital because we do not have money to travel, and sometimes we don't have time. So they have really done us a great favor and helped to make things easier for us here in the village.
I feel happy because I have been wondering when the vaccine will reach me. I was just hearing over the radio and didn't know whether it will reach those in the rural areas. So I feel really happy to have received the vaccine and would like the second dose too to be brought here so I can get it like today.
Kenya began vaccinating its population in March after getting slightly over 1 million doses of AstraZeneca vaccines. The vaccination process in the country has, however, been progressing at a slower pace due to lack of sufficient doses. The East African country has vaccinated less than 2% of its population. Nick Mudimba, CGTN.
And now to some breaking news just in. The China National Space Administration on Wednesday released photos taken after the landing of the Tianwen-1 Mars probe last May 14th. One of the photographs shows the separation of the lander and the rover. The other image was taken by the rover after landing. China's Tianwen-1 mission has been in the Red Planet's orbit since February. It was launched in July last year aboard a Long March 5 rocket. Well, we are receiving news just in that the China National Space Administration on Wednesday released photographs taken after the landing of the Tianwen-1 Mars probe last May 14th. One of the photographs shows the separation of the lander and the rover. The other image was taken by the rover after landing. China's Tianwen-1 mission has been in the Red Planet's orbit since February. It was launched in July last year aboard a Long March 5 rocket. Let's now go to Morocco, where young surfers are trying to revive the fortunes of a remote fishing port by promoting it as a destination for water sports and community development projects. They are also teaching local children to brave the crushing waves.
Perched between desert and ocean, Tarfaya town in Morocco offers free work opportunities for its 9,000 inhabitants. A group of surfers are teaching local children to surf. More than 100 boys and girls have attended the free surfing classes. The surfers also teach the children languages, hoping to open the horizons beyond scant local job offerings or the lure of joining migrants heading to Europe via illegal routes.
We'd like in the future, and especially when the cruise ship between the Canary Islands and Tarfaya launches again, to open a surf camp in which all the students will work. As part of our language learning plan, to broaden the horizon with tourism so that they can run this project of the surf camp, which will be related to the club. Why not gain notability one day and have the Nuvas Olas brand known worldwide?
While the surfing club boasts of growing numbers, the journey has not been rosy. The surfers had to win over parents fearful of the ocean swells and burst gender stereotypes.
We were trying to find a way so that young girls can surf too. Now we have a lot of girls surfing. Girls, that is the future of this club. In the future, we want a girl with a new perspective to lead.
With the students relying on this place to grow, their instructors are counting on them to brave the tides and take the club's philosophy further. Chamgono, CGTN.
Well, let's take a quick look at your sports news, and we begin with Africa Judo, where Siteni Thierry of Madagascar has been elected the new president of the Africa Judo Union in elections held during the body's annual congress in Dakar, Senegal on Tuesday. Siteni, who is also the president of the Malagasy Olympic Committee, defeated Chadian Olympic and Sports Committee President Abaka Jema for the position. Among the notable winners on the day was a Kenyan Shadrack Maluki, who has been elected as the new chairman.